Hi, my name is Jessica, and along with me is my classmates Mitzi and Paul, and we're part of Group 9 for Psych 3230, and this is our third podcast.
Third and final. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so one thing that I wanted to open this up with, just to give more of a perspective of what's going on right now, and it's relevant news right now of COVID. And it I found this article talking about people that play video games and social media. I don't know why it paired up video games and Facebook, but no, you know what? It paired it up because it was talking about social, because video game, remember we were talking about this in the last episode where being social,
Yeah.
video games could count as social medias and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I guess they kind of counted it for this, and it being a relatively new study. What, this was in 2020 when they did this. They're
Uh-huh.
finding out that that in certain countries there was a lot of people using Facebook. Like it says right here that 51% of people in Poland between the ages of 25 to 34 were on Facebook. So half the population of Poland just hopped on Facebook, and at least 53% of them are female. Now, onto video games,
Mm.
it's kind of the same thing, where it's almost 50-50 for genders that go into video games. It was counting into gender because they wanted to see a difference,
Mm.
and it's not really portraying youth because it's generalizing to the older people, but it still has to do with social media and its impact to them. It talks about that statistically speaking, people that use these things more often, they're more impulsive,
Mm.
especially,
I feel
well,
like,
it's
um,
COVID,
um,
they're
yeah,
inside
I
all
think
day.
definitely COVID just sparked a new, different type of wanting to communicate to people because for a good period of time, everybody was just home and there was like no interaction besides lucky if you were lucky enough you lived with loved ones or or just friends or maybe roommates.
Yeah.
But it was probably the most all of us were just very much like cooped up, like you were saying, and social life was newly like adapted where like yeah your escape was just social media, and that's kind of like how you were staring into very much related to my article about how much like COVID 19 hindered the society, as how it was a new like widespread adaptation that just came the new like idea of what was the new established social distancing amongst each other, that it increased a lot of stress, depression, a lot of anxiety, just because a lot of students were displaced from where they once were normalized. A lot of people from their jobs were displaced, and that takes a lot of adjustment, and everybody was just very much thrown into it and expected to just fluidly go with the change, but that's not really something that can be easily adjusted. Some selected few didn't mind it, but there was still a good lump sum of the world that just wasn't okay with the idea of just, hey, you're gonna just stay here and that's it. And you have to talk to people. And you may not ever see them, but you'll hear their voices.
You hear their voices. It sounds like they got schizophrenia.
That's what I think about, like for like Zoom for like school. Like there's a good lump sum of my classes where I literally don't see any of my classmates. Like I just hear the voices, and I feel like that one scene of Suicide Squad and Harley Quinn's like, oh, the voices.
Makes it sound crazy, yeah.
Oh my God. We're all gonna end up with schizophrenia. Not as like a bad thing, as a joke, even though it's not a nice joke, but we all have been like submitted to do this, and it's hard to like normalize what was once before. And we think back, like I see videos of like these like crazy concerts with like people next to each other, and it's like, ew. I
That was
never
me
want
this
to do
weekend.
that.
That was me last weekend.
I saw.
Oh. I would not want to do that. Like, I just don't want to be like all sweaty and dirty next to somebody who I don't know. Like, I was already kind of like hesitant about that before, and then COVID happened, and I was definitely like, "Oh hell no, this is not what I'm doing."
COVID really did change like the way people communicate and interact with each other. Because I feel
Oh
okay.
yeah,
So I don't know if we all know like a germaphobe,
yes.
but it really changed the way of communication and just that's why I was mentioning this article because everyone stayed inside. Everyone's you got a big boom in social media use and video games because we're
Oh yeah.
just at home.
Hmm.
So I'm over here talking to everybody through a mic, even though I really didn't care for any of this COVID stuff. I went out whenever someone was available, but
Mm,
still, like a lot more people were hesitant to talk face to face, and I think that really fucks up with people. And just relating it to the main subject that we talk about is the youth, kids not being able to go to school, having to hear their
hmm.
classmates through a microphone on a screen, not showing their faces.
Graduating on screens,
It's a
not
whole
seeing
messed up
anybody.
situation.
Like I saw a friend, my best friend's graduation last year, and it was literally just a slideshow of pictures. That was literally it.
That's
And she was
sad.
like, yeah, she's like, because I guess they allow the graduates to like submit photos. So when they show their names, they would see it. And I was like, oh, that's kind of
That's what
sad.
my community college wanted for us. They're like, oh, submit a
Oh,
picture so you could be in the slideshow. I was like, hell no, I'm transferring. I'm not even gonna count this as graduation.
this is sad. Like, honestly, not to say like that, but it's like, who wants to pay all this money and then get a slideshow?
Very true.
Like, man, I don't know. I feel like the young people took a really, really hard dip in this one. Not that's to say that they had it the worst of all. Like, yes, there has been plenty of events that have happened over the course of decades or history that have been very traumatic and very difficult to overcome, and they faced a lot of recessions and so forth. But this was a big, like, not just one particular city was affected, everybody in the world was affected. There was children, teenagers everywhere that were put in this position, and I think that's what makes it that much more, I guess, relatable, as the worst as it may sound. But it did, affect a lot of how they were trying to get interacted with each other. Like, I feel like a lot could have been done now in the position, that were years later, but I feel like it's also difficult because a lot of these young people are disassociated with what could have been, the relationships they could have made with their peers, their teachers, enjoying the youthfulness moments they were going to get to have. Like, I say it from experience, like my brother was a high school senior when everything happened, and he didn't get to experience, the simple things like grad night, graduation, prom, even though they may not seem as too big, for
Those are
us,
pretty
but the
big
thing is,
things.
they are,
I
like,
went to
I think
mine. It was
so.
pretty big, so that kind of sucks that they didn't get to do that.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most sad part. Like, even though I hated prom, like, I went, and I think about it now, and I'm like, that was the stupidest decision I ever went because I
Oh,
hated
I
it
didn't go to
now looking at
prom.
it. I did, but I like, I fell down the stairs at prom.
What the?
So, like, I think about that, like, some of my close friends laughing at me, not helping me get up, and I was already wearing this big ass dress, and I was like, but the thing is, like, moments like that, like, the youth will be able to have like those good core memories to laugh at and be like, man, that was dumb, or like, they all just kind of gather their memories or interactions or experiences off of social media. That's kind of their coping mechanism of, like, due to inconsistency of life. And I feel like that kind of interacted a lot with one of my articles, like the use of it in regards to, like, you know, the big trends that were going on, unfortunately did play a big role when it came to the correlation of teens having suicide, or just the impacts that would correlate with it as well, because the ways of them not feeling they were able to experience such events
Yeah,
or experiences can make them feel, left out, contemplating what could have been differently, or why wasn't it they given their chance. And it's not, I just wish that things could be a little bit better. Sure, we're getting in a lot better position now than we were 2 years ago, but it's still kind of unsaid still as to if we will ever get back to where we once were. Because I feel like that feels like it's like years away.
Yeah, things are constantly changing. So I think regardless, it wouldn't be how things were before. It would change,
Hmm.
but there's people that would always just think like, oh, I wish it was back like how things were back then. It's you're
Hmm.
just reminiscing. Things are constantly changing faster and faster.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So you know how we would like mostly socialize online because of like COVID and we couldn't really go out and like talk to people.
Yeah.
Um, Compared to now, would you say you're still on your phone the same amount of time or are you on it less?
I have my moments.
Lately, yeah, I kind of say I would agree with Paul. I have my moments, like some days where like I'm just trying to like de-stress and get my mind off what's going on, like all the chaos of like work, school, and all these assignments piling up. Like I feel like it's like a little bit of a way of escaping. Like, oh, I can laugh at some stupid bearded dragon with a top hat and a bow tie on,
Yeah.
eating some eating some worms, because that's entertaining. It's like, oh, it makes you laugh because it's like, oh yeah, this is the little fun time I get to have.
To put it in simple terms for me, I would have what I meant of saying I would have my moments. In simple terms, I would say my battery percentage sometimes is way higher in some days than others.
Mm.
I would not use my phone at all, and then I'll end the day with like 90% battery. And then there's days where I just use it constantly, and it's like 30.
You don't charge your phone like
It
throughout the
lasts.
day?
It lasts a while. I don't use it as much as I hope I don't. I hope I
Um,
don't.
I'm
How
like a
many
person
hours
that
a
like
week do you average
A
on
week.
like, yeah, like socializing
Uh,
online?
Socializing, zero. I don't talk to people. I don't know.
I have to. I have
I can't
no
count.
choice.
I
But
have no
like
idea.
just texting or like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, anything like that. Zero, Paul?
Uh, I have no idea. I don't really text people, so I don't really. I mean, today my phone started
So,
blowing up because of something I posted, but that's a rare occasion that people start texting me.
What about you,
so
Jessica?
I'm looking right now because I'm looking at my analytics on my phone. It says
Mhm.
my total screen time a week is only 42 hours.
That's like a job.
Yeah, 42
You
hours and
clock in on
17
your phone
minutes.
from 9 to 5. The break you get is charging it.
I'm on my phone 8 hours and 27 minutes. It was
Oh
down
my
5%
god.
this week.
Down? So it's higher?
It was high. Yeah, the first.
I I averaged 30 hours and 19 of those hours was like socializing, like texting, TikTok, Snapchat.
Oh yeah, I think that's what mine is too. It's all mainly like Instagram. Yeah, 9 hours and 39 minutes is Instagram. 9 hours and 24 minutes is Google Docs. 9 hours and 2 minutes is Safari.
This kind of ties to my article because increased use of like social media is actually
Mm,
tied to like lower well-being, and less time on social media is tied with higher well-being.
I can see that. 'Cause like your
Yeah.
priorities are different, you're being more productive, you're a lot healthier, not being overconsumed with data and like nonsense and information. I feel like sometimes social media can be very disbelieving, like, oh, that's a little bit of a stretch to be sane, but okay, go off. Well, you, Paul, what do you think?
Man, you got me looking at my phone for the usage. I don't know what I'm using.
No,
I
you
was
have an
still looking
iPhone,
for
right?
that.
So
No,
you
I
go to
don't.
your iPhone.
I
Let's
don't.
say if you have an iPhone, you would go on screen time.
Oh god. If I put screen time, it just shows parental control. I don't know. I guess we'll never know. I could just say I don't use my phone. It's fine.
You sound like Kanye West. I guess we'll never know.
I guess we'll never know. I'm just too good for my phone. I don't use it. I send people letters.
I still do that too. See,
Well,
that's
I
what
send it to
good.
my
I'm
friend
so glad
anyway.
you said. I'm so glad you said that. Aw, that's nice. I'm
I make it
thoughtful.
like a little arts and crafts thing. You guys ever, when you guys were younger in elementary school or whatever, did you guys ever burn paper then soak it in coffee and then it comes out
Yes, it
red?
looked
No.
vintage. It
I
looked
do that.
vintage.
I do that for him.
I think
So,
it's so cool.
ew.
Was this your lover, like Dear John?
Oh yeah, that's my boy, my lover David.
But okay, I want to say, so even something simple as that, I feel like if I were to ask a young person, hey, can you write a letter? And they'll be like, what's that? Because like the
They wouldn't know
simpleness
what
of
a
just not
letter.
using,
They wouldn't know what a letter is.
that's what I
They would
mean.
type it
Like,
out on a doc instead of like physically writing it with like a paper and pencil.
but that's like the beauty of it, not having to rely on technology. Because we're at one point in time, all of us, I remember in school, and I went to Catholic school. I remember they used to have us write letters, like format it, give us an envelope, write whatever, like write a letter to your parents how much you love them, or write a letter to Jesus about what you're thankful for.
I hope he reads it.
Like I remember that, like that kind of thing. Like what happened to the youth even having that kind of association with not having to be reliant upon, the iPad, the cell phone, the like whatever else they're using nowadays to type. Because I don't even know.
Yeah.
I sound old saying that.
I mean, okay, so I could jump on that and relay that to my other article that I have because you're talking about like how it's easy for them and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And letter wise, yeah, sure, you can't really blame them because they're there. Technology is advancing. They have to use what they got. It's easy. You use it too. We're using it right now.
Oh yeah. So we're hypocrites. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, we're all old now. But like I was saying is that from what I have here is that people use like Twitter to find groups and stuff to communicate with people.
Oh
And
yeah.
they were using it to discuss like mental health stuff and stuff that they don't like about mental health professionals. Like, oh,
Hmm.
screw them. I have better counseling. Uh, talking to people on like Instagram and Twitter pages,
Oh my
and
gosh, yes.
statistically, they it's a good coping mechanism. Speaking of like-minded people,
Mhm.
it works.
Hmm. I
Because
do.
they could give out advice since they've
Exactly,
already
exactly.
experienced it themselves. But you know what? I actually read an article that focused on like suicidal behaviors, and everyone within the post was like giving advice to each other on how to cope with like suicidal thoughts. And what was sad was that everyone who was giving advice are people who already experienced those suicidal thoughts.
Oh.
And
It's
they
just
would
like,
know. They would know.
mhm,
But I feel
They
like
would,
that's
yeah.
also very helpful because a person knows how, well, not to say it's like a bad thing, but the person when they're in that position is like when they're not actually there, they can give the best advice to make sure the next person who feels there doesn't feel so like
yeah.
what is it called? Increase to the idea of like wanting to pull through with it. Like they can be more reassuring, you can be more
Mhm.
empathetic and like, give them more resources to like how to get out of it or what helped them get out of it. Like I feel like it does like have a good balance at the end because the individual that's speaking on about it is doing it on good terms. I've seen a lot of times where like I don't know if you guys remember the old Tumblr days where they used to like
Oh, yeah, we
say some
talked about
really
this. Yeah,
dark stuff. Oh,
yeah.
they used to talk about some dark stuff about like, you know, saying that it's like cool to be like this and I'm glad to see like things have definitely gotten better in
Back in the
like
2000
the
emo phases.
oh hell no. I love Twitter now because like if they automatically see someone like going through something, everybody jumps on it and then they're trying to find them where they're at, how they can get in contact with them, find their mother, their cousin, their whatever, what school or job they work at. It's like you can go to Twitter and find almost anything and that's probably like the best thing that comes out of it.
And I feel like it's easier for them to speak to people like that than to like a a therapist or psychologist who like
They feel comfortable.
has no
like-minded people.
experience with stuff like that, you know.
Well, they have experience only to like a certain regard, like a medical
I know, but they've
perspective.
never like.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't know obviously, but like probably they've never had suicidal thoughts before, so they don't know exactly how that person is feeling.
Speaking with
Yeah.
like-minded people makes you feel comfortable. That's why it
Yeah.
works. That's a very big pro to this whole thing
Yeah.
for like the youth and
But I
and
still think
social
it's
media.
also a good thing. They encourage, healthy, substantial living. They have positive feedback amongst each other. But, that's just one great thing that comes out of it now than anything is that through time, everything has gotten better. Mhm.
All right. You guys want to wrap up this final episode with this, or
Yeah, I'm
anyone
good
else
with
have
that.
any
Yeah.
comments?
I'm good.
All right. So thank you for listening, and this is the final episode for our podcast, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks, guys.